All right, guys, there you have it. The New York Pro just wrapped up. We just got the final results in for men's open bodybuilding, and it basically went as expected. Nick Walker wins the show. Like I said after the prejudging, I think the story of the New York Pro was the Nick Walker show. I mean, this kid, he came in looking fantastic. Honestly, it's really exciting. I'm really excited for Nick here. This also means he's going straight to the Olympia stage. So we will see Nick on the Olympia stage and see how he looks against the very best in the world. Because at this show, the New York Pro, which is arguably the third most competitive, the third biggest, the third most important show behind the Arnold Classic US and the Olympia, I think Nick walked away with this victory. And we're going to have to see the scorecards. We'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. We'll look at those. But I think after prejudging, Nick had to have been so far ahead that he had it in the bag after prejudging. I think at the night show, he did look a little bit softer, but at prejudging, he was so good that I think that had to have given him a crazy lead in this show. I mean, I don't think there was any question in anybody's minds, judging by how the crowd reacted when Nick came out on stage to do his posing routine, that Nick was the clear-cut winner. I think if anybody else had won, there probably would have been a riot. Nick looked that good. I mean, it was like a slam-the-door-shut type of situation. And a couple things I noticed with Nick that I really liked. His posing was phenomenal. He kept his midsection in check the entire time. You could tell he was very conscious of keeping it contracted, keeping it controlled, keeping his abs tight. Even in the transitions, I noticed that in his posing routine. I noticed that in prejudging. He had very deep separated abs all throughout his routine and all throughout the comparisons. That's because he really put an emphasis on controlling his midsection. And that's really all you need to do. That's why sometimes when we harp on these guys that have thicker midsections, all it really takes is training to control it during the poses and kind of hiding it, in a sense, during those transitions. And if it looks good the entire time you're on stage, that's all you got to do. And Nick has done that. He doesn't have the smallest midsection. He doesn't have the prettiest midsection. But he practiced, and he practiced his posing, and he practiced his control over it. And it really showed, I think, in his posing routine. Very seamless posing. You could just tell this guy has really put in the work. He put his money where his mouth is. Let me get to the other placings here really quickly. So Nick took first. Justin Rodriguez took second. I think it was a lot closer between Justin and Nick at the night show than it was at prejudging, but even then, I don't know how close it really was. Again, we're going to have to see the scorecards. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Hassan Mustafa ended up taking third. I think the big issue with Hassan was conditioning. I mean, I think it was pretty clear as soon as he came out on stage at prejudging that he was off. And as soon as Nick came out at prejudging, it was pretty clear that Nick was 100% on. I mean, this guy nailed it. He was perfect. Nick Walker was fourth place at the Chicago Pro last year. I'm going to go out on a crazy limb here and say if we saw this Nick Walker that we saw at prejudging at this New York Pro, if that Nick Walker was at the Olympia in 2020, that Nick Walker would have been fourth place at the Olympia, not the Chicago Pro. If we saw that exact Nick Walker from prejudging on stage at the 2020 Mr. Olympia last year, I think he would have been top four. I think he would have been first call out at the Olympia. I honestly think that. But then getting back to the placings, in fourth place you had Dorian Haywood, and in fifth place you had Muhammad El-Shaban. So the other thing that a lot of you guys might be wondering about is Blessing Iwodebu. Everybody was talking about Nick versus Blessing. Blessing wasn't even top five here. Again, we're going to have to wait to see the scorecards to see where Blessing placed. We didn't even get to see Nick and Blessing in the same call-out, which I think is extremely impressive. And Nick has got to be laughing when he gets backstage. This is how you want a rivalry to end. And I'm kind of curious to see tomorrow what the back and forth between Blessing and Nick is on social media, if Blessing congratulates him, if there's still beef, or what the deal is. I'm kind of curious to see what happens on Instagram after this show between Blessing and Nick, because Nick slammed the door shut. There's no question about it. Nick was so far ahead of Blessing, they weren't ever even in the same call-out. That's how far ahead Nick was of Blessing. They didn't even bother comparing Blessing to Nick because there was that big of a gap, which I think if you're Nick, that's got to be the way to end a rivalry, is for your rival to not even make it to your call-out. And I don't want to take anything away from second place here. Justin still looked really impressive. He was in really good shape. He looked very similar to how he looked at the New York or at the Indy Pro. I think he might have looked a little bit sharper in Indy than he looked here. But Justin still looked fantastic. But Nick was just that good. I think Justin If Nick wasn't there, Justin obviously would have won because Justin was second, but I think Justin would have blown away this lineup if Nick wasn't there, and everyone would be talking about how great Justin looked. Justin really did look good. But I'm telling you guys, Nick was just on another level. I know it's been a while since we've had bodybuilding shows. Actually, give this video a thumbs up and comment in the comment section below if you're just happy and excited that we're talking about a bodybuilding show happening right now. We've been through about 5 months of no bodybuilding shows at all whatsoever. 2021 started out with nothing. Everything was still shut down. They weren't doing shows. And here we are talking about a great rivalry, a great exciting result. Nick Walker winning this show is exciting as hell because we're going to see him on the Olympia stage. And dude, I'm telling you, if Nick Walker looks like he looked at prejudging at the Olympia, he's going to be in the first call out. If he looks better than he looked at this show at prejudging at the Olympia, dude, he could be top 3. I mean, this kid, I'm really impressed. Just last year on this channel, I was making videos about Nick Walker being the most impressive guy in the NPC. And now he's winning shows like the New York Pro. Now he's going to the Olympia stage within less than a year's time from the time that I was making those videos. This kid is the future. You've got guys like Ronnie Coleman or Sean Roden that are winning the Olympia in their 40s. Nick Walker is 26 years old. He's got 15 years to work on his physique if he possibly wants to win the Olympia one day. And he's already going to the Olympia this year off a tremendous win. I love it, man. I love to see it. I'm really curious to see what the conversation on social media is between him and Blessing, and if they squash the beef or maybe they got a rematch in 2 weeks in California. I'm assuming Nick's not going to compete anymore. I'm assuming he's going to shut it down and focus on the Olympia, but you do have the California in 2 weeks. And I would think for sure it's in Blessing's best interest to do the California because he's definitely not qualified for the Olympia yet. If he wants to do the Olympia, he's going to have to keep competing for sure. If I were Nick, I'd probably just shut it down. Now, also in 212, I wanted to give a shout-out to the 212 winner, Nathan Epler from Indiana. Nathan just took second last weekend at the Indy Pro. But this is a massive win for Nathan. Last week at the Indy, that was his pro debut, his first 212 show ever. He just turned pro. So he took second at the Indy, and then he just won the New York Pro, and now he's going to the Olympia. So we got 2 young guys in both categories with Nathan in 212 and Nick Walker in men's open that are going to the Olympia now, and we get to see where they place. And by the way, Nathan Epler, I was really impressed. The guy had a really aesthetic physique. His conditioning was great. His posing was great. I was actually really impressed by Nathan Epler. I honestly, looking back at the Indy Pro, I was predicting that Nathan was going to win the Indy Pro. So he came back in New York and he took what's his. So that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I'm going to have another video for you guys tomorrow. I'm going to go over the scorecards in tomorrow's news video. But just give this video a thumbs up, man. If you're happy to see bodybuilding is back, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up for Nick Walker going to the Olympia, bro. This is going to be a good Olympia. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet already. As always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.